Look within. Look within. Look within. And live your life on the edge of two worlds. A reality where you find true understanding of who you are. Take the step into the unknown with Alexander McCaig and Jason Rigby as they explore the thinly veiled world of consciousness, spirit, and the human condition. Join them in embodying the oneness of all. Walk the cliff's edge between the seen and the unseen realities. Welcome to High Density Living.
Oh, we're back for another Creational Law episode.
I love it. These are getting a lot of hits. We just broke another record for month for downloads.
That's awesome.
On our podcast. So.
Yeah, I think what's nice about each of these, like our entire series, they've built upon each other. Mm-hmm. So as you start in the beginning and you keep going up, as the understanding is there, it's laid a foundation for you to be like, oh, okay, I can really start to grasp a lot of what's going on here. Not that it's difficult to grasp. You can listen to them one off.
Right.
But it's great to have built that foundation so that it's like a good curriculum at school. It's a good curriculum for the self.
I just like, as you study these, you become more self-aware of them, and then you can point out in real time the law that's
cool.
happening.
And and honestly, that's fun. It's like, I listened to it, I heard it, I was like, oh, no, I'm literally observing this.
Yeah, I was talking to someone last night, and I shared our Law of Opposites episode.
Yeah.
That was our last one, and that's published. And I shared that one to this person I was talking to, and they were just blown away. Like, they were like, this makes a lot of sense. I always look at positive and negative, and once I listen to it, there's this whole view I have now of looking at it. And coming to speak of today's law, let's get into the law of one, the law of unity.
And it's also the law of confusion. Oh, that's free will. I'm sorry. So law of one, law of unity. I'm sorry. I'm fucking confused.
Must be nice.
Yeah, I'm confused. Must be nice.
Alex started laughing so hard when he saw my shirt today.
I was crying. I was actually crying when I saw the shirt.
I had a flannel on. I took it off, and he just stared at my shirt, and I was like, "Oh, okay." And then he just started laughing. Yeah,
that's exactly what I needed this morning. I thank you for that.
Yes.
So you handed me a book, and you're like, "Just open this up." So you gave me the Tao Te Ching, and I opened it up to verse 14, and it's called Beyond Reason, and it says, "That which we look at but cannot see is the invisible. That which we listen to but cannot hear is the inaudible. That which we reach for but cannot grasp is the intangible. Beyond reason, these three merge, contradicting experience. Their rising side isn't bright, their setting side isn't dark. Senseless, unnameable, they return to the realms of nothingness, form without form, image without image, indefinable, ineluctable, elusive. Confronting them, you see no beginning. Following them, you see no end. Yet riding the plowless plow can seed the timeless Tao, harvesting the secret transcendence of the now." And when we're talking about the law of one, the law of unity, much like this beyond reason, is that there's things we can't touch in this world. There are those spiritual things, those unseen things. But they interact so much with the balance of our material. It's those opposites like you spoke about. But unifying those opposites is where we find ourselves in that really special area of wisdom. And understanding that oneness, that unity of these two things can bring us great ideas in our perspective. They can help equalize our thoughts, equalize our views, equalize our interactions and our emotional responses when we're dealing with people or our own thoughts.
Yeah, and I like the first bullet point you have. A oneness is only then able to remain such when it is not split, when no splitting is caused. And I had thought of one thing, and you can speak to this, and it's probably, it should be more elevated than it is, and that is silence.
Yeah.
Silence is unity.
Silence is unity. And what happens when you break the silence? There's talking or multiple people talking, right? It's audio versus non-audio. And then they combat one another. But in the silence it is consistent sound.
It's now. Yeah.
It's a sound of now. Mm-hmm. There's no breakage. It's this continual fine line of tone, of like a tone of nothingness. There always is tone. There always is sound, but you might not recognize it. But that silence is the now. It's living in that moment. So living in the silence, right? Like silencing the thoughts, finding that calm allows you to find a oneness, a unity of your world, right? It allows you to bond with the moment. Rather than live outside of it, you become one with the moment. You live in the moment. That's what that silence affords you. When you reduce the chaos of the mind and you unify the hemispheres of the brain, you get everything thinking in accordance. That is where you want to be. Like that's an end goal.
And people need to understand when you speak of the law of one or law of unity. I was listening to a Jewish mystic, and he was talking about Yahweh, and he was talking about that's our breath, like Yahweh.
Oh, interesting.
And then he was going into that's the first thing you have is your breath when you are created.
Yep.
And then when you pass on from this meat suit,
it's the last thing you do.
That's the last thing you do, and that's unity.
That is unity, right? It's filling out both ends. But when you bring them together, that is life. So the beginning and the end combined, these polar opposites, the unification of them, their oneness defines life.
Yes, exactly.
I hope that. I think that's pretty cool.
No, I when you say defines life, how the minute that popped into my head when I began to think of that was we always want, our monkey mind always wants to define something. It always wants definitions.
Sure.
Like we're always seeking security, comfort. That we've done that since the beginning of time. We created fire. We've always created, and that's what's elevated humanity in a physical sense.
Yeah.
Is understanding. That's what we have science for, all of these things. So we always want to take the esoteric philosophy, all these different things, and we're always trying to shove them through our short perspective filter and say, how can we unify this to justify a certain action that humanity is doing?
Right.
If you know what I mean. So the define is very important, and that's what brings security and comfort to people when they can define something.
Think about definition. Like even on your TV, you get a high def TV, the picture is more clear, is it not?
No, I have a tube TV, 17-inch Sony Trinitron from 1996.
You turn it on, it's got like it has a static charge that like pulls stuff to the front of the screen.
You try to hang that on.
And I love the
Remember
noise
when they would hang the TVs and they had the big shelf that came out?
Oh, huge. Sporting it off the wall. And you're like, that's got
and
a
you
little
have
bit
the cable up there.
It's got a little bit of a bow to it. You know what I mean? And you'd knock on the screen to have a great hollow noise.
Oh, yeah. Great noise. Yeah.
But having that high definition, it gives you the granularity. You get to see all the color. You see how the picture comes together. You see how the picture unifies, right? And that's this law of one in its complete sense says that nothing is disconnected from anything else. Even though you try and separate it, it then steps back to a state of being one, right? So if you divide, 1 by 2, it's still going to be 1. So it's like you're saying, we're going to split it in half, multiply it by 0.5, whatever you want to do. It's still two pieces of the same whole. So no matter which way you look at it, it's still its own unifying experience. And then just because they're separate materially, they're still interacting in one closed system, which is this universe. So you're stuck in the one regardless. It's a principle of interconnectedness between everything. And if that is the overarching part of the system, is that law of one, that law of unity, well then would I as a person align with creation so that everything I do is unifying?
Yes.
My thoughts, how I work with silence, how I meditate, deal with people, do the actions in my life, how I view my birth and my death, how do I unify all of these different things so I get that HD picture of what life really is? Because with that clarity, I can see more. If your life was a movie and you got really good picture quality, now you're starting to appreciate the different colors of, the deep blacks that the producer puts in there, or the rich blues, or.
Well, it's also when you look at oneness and you look at it in a universal aspect, and we look at ourselves as being reincarnated beings.
Yeah.
Now you can look at it as you have the ability to tap into understanding a movie is understanding the infinite producer's mind.
Yeah.
So you can step into looking at your life separate from the current reality and view that lens through this perfect producer that is, do you know what I'm saying? And I think that's why meditation is so important.
Yeah.
But that producer is that producer, if we want to use that word, is there's no wrongness to it. There's no rightness to it. There's no wrongness to it. And what I'm trying to say is when you can take that approach, like we'll get real practical. Let's say you're a business leader, and we talked about this on our Tartle episodes, and I encourage everybody to go to tartle.co, sign up, get their data, our sponsor. Please, but also we have a YouTube channel. You can just type in Tartle and subscribe to that. And we talk real practical. But if you're a business leader and you're picking a side, you can have oneness in your leadership.
Sure.
Just as well as you can, and you can put this law into practice of unity. So if I'm going to get real controversial right now, if our leaders, whether it was Donald Trump or Joe Biden, would say, how can we unite the country through this pandemic?
Correct.
What would that look like? Well, that looks like you're not picking a side.
Yeah, you don't pick sides. You don't create false polarities. You don't you're not acting non-creationally. Your thoughts are unifying. So in a non-physical sense, right? In the immaterial, the spiritual sense, you have unifying thoughts. And then those would have to transition into the physical. How do we unify each other?
Because and you mentioned this on our COVID one where we talked about data with the vaccines that are coming out.
Yeah.
But if we looked at, and you can speak to this in case they didn't hear this on the Tartle episode, the first thing that a leader should come out and say, okay, here's what COVID-19 is. It's a virus.
Yeah.
And biologically, and maybe you can explain the law of unity with this virus and how it works in
the virus for its survival, like us, right? It needs some place to live. We have to unify with our shelter. Otherwise, the shelter is useless. It doesn't work if I stand outside of my home. It's not going to protect me from the weather. Well, if the virus wants to protect its life, it has to find a host. It needs a house to live in. A hermit crab needs a shell.
Right.
A human being needs a square box to be in. We all require these same things. We're all trying to unify, find that shelter and that preservation of life. But it joins up to create a oneness with that host. It's not being evil or mean. It's completely indifferent.
It has no emotion.
There's no emotion. It's a virus.
Yes.
Like every other virus that's out there.
So if I'm a leader in a country and I stand up and say, first of all these emotions that we're having towards this virus, all these sides that we're picking.
It makes us separative.
And we're wrong because here's what a virus is. Here's what it does. Logically, as a country, here's what we need to do.
Yeah, the virus
together
wants to become one with its host.
Yes.
And we wouldn't have political parties. When you start to view your world with the creational law of unity, this law of oneness, it forces you in your perspective to look beyond yourself.
Yes.
It's no longer just about you. You become more systemic in your thinking, which means you have to recognize cause and effect.
Yes.
You have to recognize that it's the self and the other self, that our interactions are a unification of you and I coming together.
Yeah. And I think this ties right on to your next bullet point. And this is so great. This is like teed up big time. When a oneness is divided, this is no longer forms a whole, and the value of the relative absolutely full development is lost. Now, that word lost, we just lost people. So let's go back. When a oneness is divided, there is no longer forms. I like the plural world. And I want you to speak this, a whole.
Yeah.
Let's stop right there.
So the universe is naturally whole.
Yes.
Okay. It's not someone's just taking a piece of paper and ripping it like right down the center and creating two halves. It's in this unification, right? And so when you combine these things to a whole, there's greater power. When people talk about power in numbers, well, everything we're doing is separating that power. So when it's saying our form can't get to relative absolute perfection, it can't move up to what creation is because we're separating ourselves from that form, from that powerful, collective, unifying form. Creation's showing you the greatest strength you have, and that's working together. It's working together with your thoughts. It's about unifying your body with your thoughts with other people's thoughts, body with body. Like when two people have sex, right? It's two forms coming together to create one form.
Right.
Okay? Biologically, we're doing that. Emotionally, we do it in that instance. Okay? That is creation in itself, but you can expand upon that unifying principle. You know, you feel that love of unifying with people. It doesn't have to be intercourse of a group of 50,000. I'm not talking about an orgy.
Right. Yeah. But biologically, even mitochondria is exchanged and it stays in that person permanently.
Yeah. And it does. And that's what it's doing. Right. So to move up to relative absolute perfection, we can't be ripping things apart. We can't be ripping ourselves apart. We can't be taking perspectives of mind and just smashing them against one another. Right. Saying this is different than that. And that's how it's going to be. It's like, how do we unify things that are opposite to create a form, a balanced form, right? Like a battery, the battery has to have both sides. We talked about these poles. So how do we unify poles? That's where the power of a battery comes from, the unification of positive and negative. If you want to unify a country, look with a perspective through the law of unity, where you bring both sides together. That's when it becomes a powerful battery. But right now it's a dunce. It's like a fragile cell, not a Duracell. It's a fragile.
And we see, I mean, with the electoral college and the votes and all that, we're basically seeing a perfectly divided country. If you boil it down to what we've seen, I mean, if you take the percentage of the votes, just take the data, we're perfectly divided.
But that's de-evolutive for us.
Yes.
That's not evolutionary. We don't reach that relative absolute perfection for ourselves and us as a collective.
Because I guarantee you we agree on more things than we disagree.
Oh, yeah.
As humanity in general.
Most definitely.
I guarantee you, you could even take a severe country. Let's use China. China seems to be our great enemy, especially with technology and stuff. Mm-hmm. I guarantee if you took, we'll use the study, 15,000 indigenous Chinese people, and you took 15,000 Americans from all the different parts, and you started doing a study, I guarantee you we would agree on a lot of things.
You bet we would.
We all want a shelter. We all want Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah, we want the basic necessities in life. And then when we have them, once they're suited, then we start to get crazy. Mm-hmm. Then we'll start like counteracting with one another. What are the nuances of it? Like everybody's their own best philosopher.
Yeah, like, well, I think if it's now, it's like, this woke culture and all that stuff that's going on now, and people are going to get offended with me, but it's almost like, so you have these Karens, and they're sitting in these mansions, and they're just, or you get, the worst is these Hollywood celebrities that all of a sudden has become philosophical in this whole process, and they want to cancel people, and
they have so much limelight. You need to be careful, because at the same time, what you're saying is also, it creates division.
But when you're sitting on this plush $10,000, $20,000 couch in your feathery Chanel slippers,
how can you
drinking from your $40 juice that was made from your private
and
chef?
You're filming it on a $2,000 cell phone.
Yes, yeah.
How can you speak to the disparity?
Yes,
truthfully.
What unity are you creating by canceling somebody?
Yeah, that doesn't
cancel culture. Just the name of that.
What is canceling? Canceling is a function of division. Mm-hmm. It's a stopping. It's a separation.
Yes.
It's a non-unifying approach. You're stopping the flow of things merging into one another.
Because you decided that you are God and you disagree with this information. And if you get enough people that complain, then you can say, and we can use Alex.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Why does I put on Do Not Disturb? And then
here we go. In the middle of the episode. So no, that's just an indication that Google canceled us on YouTube.
Yeah. No, we're still good. But no, you're right. So continue with that canceling.
No, but when you see somebody, and I'm not going to name names because the algorithm will pick it up.
Yeah.
But when you see different people that may be very polarizing, and they have a voice to speak, it is not for us to decide. And we have a constitution here in the United States, and we have the first amendment.
Yep.
It is for we need information. We need all kinds of information that comes to us, and then you filter it through the laws, and then you have the responsibility to make the decision: is this information decisive or not? And if enough people come together, this is why you need disinformation.
Yeah, because then you know what is good
what
information
is and what isn't.
Yeah, and listen, then you can find out what unifies and what doesn't unify.
Yes,
right.
But if you cancel all the negative current,
yeah,
and you only have positive current, you don't have power.
There's no power.
Yes.
And it's power in the raw sense of power, not power over another in some sort of forceful, mightful way. It's just pure creational power.
That is eternal.
And it's always there. And these laws, when you can look to them, when you can unify all of these laws, there's great power in your development. You make great strides in your relative absolute fulfillment of your evolution.
I was just reading that when you said that full development is lost.
Really?
You have that in here. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Full development is lost. And that's what I was bringing into the development word. When you understand that you are being, and I love this in a leadership perspective. When you as a leader, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people at Higher Density Living that are listening to this are leaders or aspiring to be leaders, and I think you should. When you as a leader begin to take a side or be divisive, your full development is lost.
Yes.
Because now you have gone against the law of creation. You have gone against that eternal power that is available for you at any time. And now you've took your 100 employees or however many employees you've had, and you've, just like this country, you've divided it because you've took a stand. And you have created less power for yourself, and as a leader, you've influenced others and created less power.
Yeah.
That's why, I know all these Trump supporters are out there, and all these Biden supporters, and they're trying to implement that into and employees are asking you.
Yeah.
Employees are coming to you, and I'm guilty of this too. And this is why I'm thinking of this law, and this is why it helps you so much. When somebody comes to you and they ask you something personal, you need to say, how can this unify myself, the company, and humanity?
That's precisely correct.
That should be my words that I speak.
And that is that whole form, right? Rather than having, that is the full sphere, because it's very three-dimensional. That is the unifying purpose of our lives. That's how we truly develop. You can only develop so much yourself.
Yes.
But if you don't learn to interact and play well with others, you don't get past kindergarten. Yes. Wasn't that the initial rules or whatever it was?
Yes.
That was a function of kindergarten, is learning how to work well with others.
Yes.
You're going to be stuck in kindergarten forever. You're going to be playing with your arts and crafts forever. You'll never truly get into the more granular testing knowledge of your evolution. You can't truly grow unless you learn to unify with others in a group setting.
That's why we have diplomats that go to different countries.
Yeah.
To try to prevent war.
But most of the time they cause it.
But that's their job, Alex. Think about it. And I want people, if they were a law of creation diplomat, and they would take that perspective and think every interaction that I have is to bring unity.
Yeah, it's dipolar.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Let's get rid of the poles, right? That's what it is. That's their job, is to find that unification. But through other incentives, people saying that we can only give so much power to this or so much power to that, it naturally destroys the power structure of a diplomat.
Yeah, and whether you hate Trump or not, you have to give him kudos to the two things he did do. He went and spoke to a dictator that is archaic and crazy in North Korea. He went, that guy, and he spoke to him. Yeah. And I guarantee you, when humans interact with each other, they create an impression.
There's definitely an impression.
And what just happened with Israel? I mean, that's huge.
Listen,
how many presidents have tried? And I'm not a Trump supporter at all. I'm not a Biden supporter. But what I'm saying is, whenever you can bring people together and create unity, whether he realized it or not, he was operating in the law.
Yeah, whether he did realize it or not, and that's when great things are happening. That's when we operate within that law. Let's think about a concert. Millennials love going to these huge EDM raves. I love them.
Yes, same here. I'm not a millennial.
We all come together
I got glow sticks.
Yeah. And your big furry
EDM
boots.
people were in masks a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time. They've been wearing them for a long time. Yeah. But we come together in this unifying cause where we want to elevate ourselves in this emotional moment. We want to become one with each other and one with the music. Mm-hmm. It's a concert of unity, right? That is that law of one in action in a sense of us all coming together. So when people are like, oh, these people are just heathens. Well, not really. They're doing something a lot better than what most of us do. All of these different people have different perspectives, but we're coming together to share the unifying experience because we know the value of that community. That's what's cool about it. That
community can be had.
Yes.
In anywhere.
Anywhere, universe. Any instance, anything.
Right.
Any culture, it doesn't matter what it is.
So, because we did the raw teachings, and the books are called The Law of One.
The Law of One.
Whenever we look at the raw teachings, and we see the Law of One, one of the things that really spoke to me about it is this ability to be able to understand, and we talked about this off air, is to be able to understand people's consciousness level.
Yeah. And
bring unity to that.
Yeah.
Maybe you could speak to that. So, we have higher density living. Obviously, we have people that are trying and working towards being a better person.
Yeah.
When you take the perspective of, and I think it's in the third book of where they're speaking about, and I use the word there, even though there's one voice that was there.
It's one voice, but it speaks as a collective.
Yes, which is unity.
Which is perfect unity. Amazing how that works.
But when you look at book 3, and there's a lot of this when they use unity a lot, and we see how we interact, because it's very practical, how we interact with others and how we can use this law of one with our interaction with people that have lower consciousness.
Yeah. So
and judging, you know what I mean?
Yeah. This is really interesting. The law of one, the law of unity, eradicates judgment.
Yes. There we go.
If properly used or properly, integrated into one's life. When everybody is learning or going about their day or might react in a perturbing or perverse way, or against the grain, something edgy, they're learning, and we are all on an evolutionary path. Some people are clearly more advanced, it doesn't make them better.
Right.
They're just at a stage of advancement where their learning is more difficult.
Yeah, Elon Musk is not better. He just has an amazing engineering mind, and he works like 18-hour days.
Yeah, and that's what happens. Is you start to take those steps in your evolution. Just because someone is a little bit more evolved, they're just learning in a slightly more definitive process.
Yes,
it's just less generic than what you find in the beginning. So some of the real basic things, fundamental things about what it means to be a good person.
Yes.
And how to interact.
Well, I think prime example, we were getting frustrated with an employee.
Yeah.
And you had a good approach because you shared with me, you're like, he's learning, like you just said. That's an important word. What if we looked at everybody that we had influence around?
Yeah.
As they're just learning.
Yeah, because then it's not separative.
Yes.
You're saying that person's only making mistakes, right? That's separative. If that person is sinning, they're a sinner. They get into a specific bucket. But if we're learning, whether it's a good or a bad thing that happens, it's learning regardless.
And so we in the law of unity would, because we learn, teach, learn. So that would, as they're learning, that's an opportunity for us to teach.
Yeah.
So we look at it, so we can't get emotionally charged. We can't pick a side.
No.
Now we say, now this is my opportunity to teach.
Yeah. And when you recognize people are at their own stage of learning, you just learned something also through that observation.
Yes.
So if you are, more evolved in your thought than somebody else, you again just learned something new.
Right.
It's a beautiful function. They taught you something by operating in their own level.
Yes.
And they've taught you and you learn just as much as you're teaching them and they are learning.
Well, I think our whole episode on privilege,
yeah,
I think plays right into this.
Of course it does.
Yeah, because when you look at privilege, whether you've gone to Harvard, or you have no degree whatsoever and you are, got third grade education.
Both parties have something to learn from one another.
Yes, exactly. That's why I wanted to get in. Yeah.
White collar workers, blue collar workers. We all have certain skill sets we can share. certain experiences we can pass back and forth. But those experiences can only be passed back and forth if we unify with one another, if we can help each other learn, if we're non-separative, if we don't look at them as like, oh, they're blue collar, I don't associate with them.
Right.
No, associate with everybody because everyone's a human being.
Well, the prime example, I was listening to a leadership podcast, and this guy came down, he's in charge of this company, and he came down and blue collar, came down and spoke and said, we purchased all these tools for you guys and everything else. And, he's just talking to the guys on the floor, being mechanics, working on things. Mm-hmm. And he's like, why aren't those tools are all dusty and stuff? Why aren't those being used? And he's doing it in a loving way, carrying. That's what he was saying. He's like, I just really want to know. And they're like, the guy's like, well, I hate using those. To be honest with you, he's like, if you really want me to be honest with you, these tools are horrific. I hate using them. We never use them. Instead, we have to do this, and this to overcompensate for that.
Sure.
And he's like, brilliant. Well, we don't want to be paying for things that we're not using.
Yeah.
And if you need a better tool, then literally a better tool, then how can we get rid of these and put in front of you so it's simpler and the process is easier? How can we fix that? That's only going to help the company drive more profits, be more efficient.
Right. And he's unifying the views and the values and the skill set of somebody else.
And he learned.
In that moment. Yes. It's all learning. The person didn't make, a mistake. They were just saying this just doesn't work well.
Yes.
And through the sharing, through the conversation, the unification of mind,
yes,
they collectively found power to be more efficient in their processes.
Yeah, and so let's shift. I want to get into this bullet point. This is the law of all existence. Mm-hmm. And it is the law of, and this is interesting, it is the law of the life.
Yeah, remember I said unity, oneness defines life? That's what we are. We're all in this single system. You can't escape it. It's in some way, shape, or form. No matter how distant, everything is interconnected. That is life. Life is being a part of this unified piece, being a part of the whole. We talk about how your spirit is part and parcel of creation. It is creation, and it's also a piece of it. But they're both unified together. You have to exist with it. That is the fundamental nature of everything.
Well, Rumi said that. He goes, you're not just a drop of water, you are the ocean.
You are the ocean. So you're a piece of creation and you have all the characteristics of it at the same time. Even though you're just a little part, but you still are the whole. And that defines life. That is what life is. That's why this law is so overarching, because it combines all of the laws. It talks about their combination. And how that combination becomes that unity. And that's why in the Raw series, when we talked about it in previous episodes, that's their focus. If there's some highly evolved, interdimensional collective, they've realized that we've combined all the laws and the combination of them is that unity.
Yeah. And it's so funny and I had told you this before, when you read book 1, especially.
Yeah.
And everybody always wants to find the mysteries of the earth. So all the questions were like, is there Bigfoot? Well, were the pyramids made?
That's exactly right.
It was always that.
Tell me about Genghis Khan and Hitler.
You can almost, I maybe it was my emotional bias, but I can almost feel like an irritant.
Yeah, it's almost like we're a gnat asking the wrong questions.
Yeah, it's like, and the responses were just so like, to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but the responses were just so kind of like, we're going to tell you this, but this isn't the right question.
Yeah, and here's
you have an opportunity to learn.
Yeah, and you're asking about ridiculous historical stuff.
Yeah.
The end goal for all of us is relative absolute perfection. And that happens through the evolution of our spirit and our consciousness. Mm-hmm. Those things do not help you evolve to the highest possible state.
No.
We'll answer them for you, but recognize that that's not where your growth is.
There was a large primate that lived here. Next, you have primates now.
Yeah, like what do you? Duh.
How you need to ask me questions to evolve humanity. Not
but the thing is, even though they are higher evolved, they didn't say we're not going to answer it.
Yeah,
it's still maintaining.
Or
the
like, hey,
learn.
idiot, this is a stupid question.
Yeah, no, it maintains the unification that people have their own way of learning. Right, their own approach of getting there, but bringing them together finally will get them to that point of that evolution, because they're sticking with them. No matter how absurd a question might be, they need to continue to unify. That's the highest teaching.
Yes.
especially in their view.
Yeah, when they're talking. So this law also has its validity for the earth human, being whose oneness in living together in the whole mass of the humankind as individuals form the concord.
Yeah. So a concord is a group, a decision-making group. And, it's amazing that when things become out of sight, out of mind, we think that doesn't affect us.
Yes.
But we are all on one spherical rock. It doesn't stop at the edge. The line traces around. It all connects. You need to work with one another. You're on a closed system. You're sitting on a closed system within a greater closed system.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you need to work on your effects and how you actually look at unification, because there's no way you're going to be able to leave this system and say, oh, I want to look at the rest of the universe. I want to know more. Well, you can't even figure it out at the place you live.
Yes.
Why would you drag your trash,
That's true,
beyond your closed system? I can see why there's not really a big push or incentive to actually leave the planet for just opportunity, the population, humanity en masse, because we haven't figured it out here. Don't drag the trash somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. I love the word validity you use in the sentence, because it stands for valid.
Mm-hmm.
And this law, as do all laws, but this law specifically validates.
Yes.
It validates the earth human, as you would use, because when we're operating in this law, we're creating validity.
Yeah, you create validity as truth.
Yes.
And so by operating in this law, you're creating fundamental truths over and over and over.
And that alone is the power, because now you have this polar view that let's say we're going to use leadership again. You have a group of people that are coming to you and they're opposites, and you have all this discord. And then you bring truth through oneness. You bring truth into that group. Now you have validity.
Yeah.
Now
your discord has become concord.
Yes.
When you have truth is unifying, because truth affects both parties. So it has to naturally bring things. The word truth is naturally unifying. So when you do things that are truthful, when you search and research for the truth, when you live in truth, you live in the law of one.
Because most people, when they experience truth, I would say the average, especially here in America, I would say the average American, and everybody would agree to this, the average American would be like, that's truthful, I was wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all do that all the time. Like, oh shit,
Yeah. Like,
I was wrong on that. Okay. I'll change my position.
Yeah. What's funny about that is when, a lot of people on social media, they'll see someone cut a piece of fruit, right, a certain way. And they're like, oh, I've been wrong my whole life about how I've been cutting, mangoes.
Yeah, I saw the whole thing with avocados and how to keep them in the fridge.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like,
you're just like, oh,
snap. And that is that learning moment of finding a truth that works best for everybody.
I love your analogy though, because think about this.
You feeling that analogy?
No, because what do we do when we experience solid truths like that?
Yeah.
We change our behavior.
Yeah.
We will implement that super quick.
We're shook for like a moment.
Yes.
We become silent.
Yeah.
We're like really taking it. When you see something that you're like, whoa, wait a minute. You're processing. You have it's like the computer is going, it makes the ticking noise. You can hear the hard drive spinning.
Yeah.
It's doing that on the loading bar because it has to reprocess your whole hard drive.
Yes.
It's like, oh my God, I have this new truth. I got to apply this into the algorithm of my life, and I'm reprocessing. And you're watching the loading bar, 89%, there's silence for that moment.
Yeah, there is, yeah.
The old days of installing something, you're just watching, waiting.
Well, what I think, but I like is that change happens.
Yeah. But change in itself is unification. Everything is in flux. Mm-hmm. But it's finding that equilibrium and that balance, of these two things that are opposite in their polarities, but they have to unify. And it's that interplay between both of them. Yeah. That's what that oneness is.
Yeah. And the thing I like about this statement, I think more than anything, is whose oneness in living together in the whole mass. Mm-hmm. But as you said, as individuals.
Yeah.
So this is what I want you to speak to, because you don't have to get rid of your individuality.
The identity.
Yes.
You don't lose who you are by being a part of the collective.
So I'm going to use a wild example. Okay, I'm an artist. You know, maybe there's a guy and he lives in the Bronx and he's an amazing artist and he's very eccentric and, you know, he's gay and he has purple hair and he's like oneness. So I got to be like everybody else for it to have unity. No. So speak to individuality.
Individuality is not the materialistic sense of how you observe things.
Yes.
Okay. Oneness is the spiritual sense, the consciousness sense. It's how you operate internally and how you recognize yourself spiritually in a group with your interactions of other people.
Well,
it's not about the color of the t-shirt I put on that defines me being a part of a collective.
Right.
I don't have to change how I look on the outside to define how I view my interactions and my lovingness with the rest of the world and others.
Well, I think this is a perfect example because, and you know this as well as I do. So this artist, now he can say, I'm going to create art and I'm going to let this art unify.
That's cool.
So he's took his individualism. He's took his ability instead of, because you can create art that divides. Oh, you could create, I mean, how much art is out there that's trying to make a statement?
Think about like graffiti.
Yes.
Like there's a lot of graffiti making a lot of statements.
Yes.
And it's much more public than something sitting in an art gallery. Does that unify?
Yes.
Most of the times, no, it does not.
Right.
And you never have to lose. Everybody is special. Our soul, our Proto-Germanic seal or zeal, is your psyche. It's your ego. Those things are all very specific to that person. No two are alike, but we are all human beings.
Right.
You can maintain your ego and the identity of that ego projected through how you dress. But your thoughts, the fundamental part of your thoughts and your actions need to be unifying in the collective sense. Be you, but also be collective. You can be both.
But I think being the true, here's truth again, being the valid you, it can also be unifying in the sense of, so let's say this art, let's say graffiti.
Oh, precisely. Yeah, go with this.
So let's say graffiti.
Yeah.
So you go to a business owner, you say, you have this beautiful wall. I want to take it and I want to point out a situation. Okay, let's use the knee on the guy's neck for, you know, and then killed him. Bam.
Yeah, say graffitied the whole thing on the wall.
Yeah, so he just graffitied that
scene.
Just that scene. You know, so that brings awareness, a polarizing awareness to something that it's an issue that we need to deal with in this country.
Correct. Yeah.
But that painting also that graffiti also, because you've gotten permission now, so you're not imposing on somebody's free will.
Correct.
By, see how the laws work. Yeah. So you've got permission. The person's like, great. So you put that picture to show, because this is the law of polarity working.
Yeah.
To show the issue. Now this is where creativity comes into play. Now you're going to show unifying in that same picture. So maybe you show a police officer and someone together holding hands, you know, and a group of people that are diverse and still have their individuality, but they're all coming together
as
for
a collective,
as a collective,
as a concord.
A concord, yes.
It reminds me of that old Amish story you always drop on me that happened in the news.
Yes. It's so powerful, isn't it?
It's a great story. And outside of them being Amish, their ego, their identity, what they choose to identify with, they took the collective unifying approach.
Yes.
And there's just great power.
There's brought unity to it. It's so powerful when you see them stand. You should watch it on YouTube.
They didn't, you know, again, they recognize the state of evolution of the person that committed the act. And they said, well, how do we unify? Well, we're going to learn from this and we're going to recognize that they're a human being. And we're not going to hate them. We're just going to integrate with what happened and we're all going to learn from it. We're going to take the most concordian approach to how we actually make our steps going forward, how we project how we think and feel.
Yeah, because whenever you take a polarizing opposite and then you put hatred to it, revenge, let's use for instance, and you put revenge to that, it only creates disease in you.
Dis-ease, you're uncomfortable.
There's that whole statement, that wise statement that says, you know, it affects you more than it affects them.
Always.
Because maybe a lower conscious being, you know, came in, that Amish thing, that guy came into school and shot all their kids.
Yeah.
So all the Amish people could be like, fuck this, go buy some AK-47s.
Let's feel hate. Let's retaliate.
Yes.
And then you have like a resonance of two sounds in physics, you've doubled the amount of power in that hate.
Yes.
You didn't equalize it. You didn't unify it with the proper energy. And so that equalization allows you to evolve to find that relative absolute perfection.
Well, it's just like when you have Trump supporters on one side of the street and then you have, Black Lives Matter group on the other side. You can feel the energy there. You could stand in the middle of that street and look at both sides and feel the polarity.
Remember the Bhagavad Gita?
Yes.
You had both armies and Krishna was sitting in the center.
Yes.
Okay. And he was there with, why is his name escaping me? Arjuna, the archer.
Yes.
They sat there in the center between those polarizing energies. It's unifying. So recognizing both sides and understanding how you unify your consciousness, your thoughts, because before we unify ourselves in the material as human beings, we have to unify the thoughts in our mind. It's not material then mind. It's mind the material.
Yeah. And I think there's a very funny, thing. And I think it's funny, and it unified in a weird way, but it unified the girl that stripped in the middle. Did you hear about this?
No,
this is cool. So all the cop cars this is during a rally.
Okay.
So you had Black Lives Matter and cops. So all the cop cars had their lights on, because it was nighttime.
Yeah.
So you had Black Lives Matter, people protesting, yelling at the cops. You had the cops sitting there probably, fuck these people. I don't know their mindset. But I'm just saying.
I had no idea.
There was
aggression on both sides.
There was aggressions on both sides. Then this girl came into the middle with all the lights on and just stripped. In that moment,
everybody paused.
Everybody was unified. I guarantee every male.
Yeah, those guys were like, oh.
We all agreed on something in that moment. You know what I mean?
I think, what she did was interesting is she, I don't really know anything about this, but aside from the sexualization of the self,
right,
in that moment, the consciousness, the thoughts changed.
Yes.
This is what's important about this. It's not the stripping. It's that the train of thought.
Well, that's important, but let's go.
the train of thought, those emotions that they have were so charged, changed their path.
Yes.
And the focus became unified.
It did.
Whether it was on some sexualized act or not, everybody focused on one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's power in those moments. And it's much like what happened on, 9/11. All of us stopped and focused on one thing.
Mm-hmm.
There was great power in that focus, even though there was sadness, right? And great things are achieved in those moments when we have those unifying focuses.
But did you see the power that she had in that moment?
She had great power.
Because it was unity.
Yeah, she found something that she knew was naturally, from a biological sense, very hard to turn your eyes away from.
Right.
It's
an evolution.
That's an evolution animalistic part of us.
Right.
It's very hard to combat that.
But what I want leaders to understand is, even though that's a silly story, it was funny, but she had unlimited attention and power in that moment. Anytime you bring any type of unity, that creates it right there at that moment.
Yeah, there's that's raw power in that moment.
Right.
And when we focus on unifying acts, whatever they might be, we can resolve great things in this world. We can resolve a lot of our problems. And I know this sounds, very foo-foo, but in truth, that's what it is. It's learning to validate our human experience, to validate what it means to be a human by living in that creational law of unity, that law of oneness, recognizing that in our mind and then putting that out into the material aspect of who we are. When we spoke in one of the Turtle episodes, we talked about posture.
Right.
Right? Is everything internally that someone recognizes and understands about themselves, everything on the physical outside is a projection of that. How they carry themselves, how they walk, talk, act, look, right? How they make that eye contact. And if we can learn first to find that internal posture, to unify ourselves, to find our balance inside, to find that oneness, then we can bring that oneness outside of us and we can help unify others. And just acting in oneness ourselves leads as an example, a powerful example, because there's great power in oneness for others, whether they recognize it or not. But when they come by and they interact with you in that brief moment of oneness, They felt that energy.
But it's not for you to dictate whether your oneness was received or not. That's
No,
why I like because then you're judging.
Yeah, because then you're judging. All you need to do was act your best self all the time.
Right.
There's no reason for you not to. You let yourself fall out of unity. You let yourself fall into discord.
Yes.
And by acting in that oneness, you're not so much worried about the outcomes of people that interact with you because you know you're living in the highest creational sense.
Yes.
So regardless, no matter what happens, no matter how briefly they touch you, there is an exchange that happened. Whether it's recognized now or 50 years later, something occurred. Okay. And that will never be taken away. And that's that unifying principle. That's the strength and that power.
I love that. Yes.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Let's close out in this last one.
Oh my God. I didn't realize we were crushing it. Yeah.
These two factors, which in themselves each form a oneness, which we talked about, unite to result in a oneness again. And then I want you to speak to this, namely the hyper oneness.
The hyper oneness. And we did an episode specifically focusing on hyper oneness, but we didn't talk about everything as the creational law. We were talking about the characteristic sense of bringing two things that are already one, like you and me. We're going to bring them together and they're going to create a new whole. That's the hyper oneness. So that's when 1 + 1 = 1. It's almost like you write 1 + 1 and then you write a big one on the piece of paper.
Yes.
Does that make sense as a visual?
Yes.
You know, but they all share the characteristics of being one, but now they're a greater oneness. It's the combination of those characteristic powers, right? If I'm running one nuclear power plant, it's outputting a certain amount of, kilowatts per hour. It's massive. It's a huge amount. And then if I want to double down on that, I'm going to take something with the same characteristics, another power plant, and I'm going to bring them together.
Right.
And the grouping of them generates more electricity. There's a higher output.
But do you think when you're looking at a power plant, let's use that for example, maybe nuclear power plant. Let's go into that because there's a universal law with that.
There is actually a nuclear power plant right now is anti-creational. And we can talk about that, but go ahead and I'll get into it.
Well, I was getting into law of polarity when I was thinking of a nuclear power plant. But whenever you see a power plant and it distributes, when you look at that distribution and us as being a power plant, because I feel if you're a higher density living being, if you're following these laws, automatically you will become a leader.
It's just a natural.
It's going to happen.
It's natural.
So now you've become a power plant.
Yeah, you become the power plant. You be able to disseminate that power to anybody that's a part of your grid.
Yes.
You know?
Yes,
exactly. If we're part of the national grid, right? Because you live in this closed system. Well, then you'd want people to feel and share in that power because they then become a power plant. And if we have all these power plants everywhere, there's great energy associated with it.
Yeah, because what if you turned around and said, every interaction that I have, I want to have it. I want to have unification.
Yeah.
In everything that I do in my life, in everyone I talk to, in my work, my passions, my play, how can it bring about unification?
Yeah. Whether I'm a stripper in the street,
right,
or I strip for money at a business, whether I'm a homemaker, male, female,
artists in the Bronx,
any sort of gender or sexuality, it doesn't matter what it is.
None of that. And those are all plays to be decisive.
Those are all decisive plays, and those are all, characteristic things of what our ego and what our psyche is, but they're not at the core focusing on the unifying parts of the human being.
And never be ashamed, because this is an important word. Never be ashamed when you're unifying.
No, there's no reason to be ashamed. It's great. There's
just because
to show
of
that you can bring people together.
Yes.
Remember the Heineken commercial?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That was so badass.
I know you love that.
Yeah, I love that. I just think it's brilliant.
Yeah, and if you can feel the emotion of it, you know that deeper truth within yourself when you see something unifying. Why do movies end on a good note?
Yes.
Because you're closing out the journey. You're unifying people in the end. The learning has happened and it's been properly integrated. It's the perfect hero's journey. That's what
so important.
That's what we're going through. And so when you look at your life, who you are, those characteristics, understand that acting in the law of one will never take away the characteristics of what makes you special. It's just going to make you more powerful with who you are and how you interact and uplift other people's lives.
That's so good. I mean, when people bring it to movies and the hero's journey, and I love that you tied it into all that, because
everything's
that's so true. I mean, you can watch people and they get so emotionally charged when they have that unification moment that they see on the screen.
Yeah.
And then they don't realize that they can do that in their everyday life.
It's not just in the film.
Right.
Take that off the black box on the wall and bring it into everything you do. And you can feel that good all the time.
All the time with yourself, with the resistance that you have in the exercise, with the proper foods that you eat. Yeah. With the mental self-awareness and the study and the learning that you do. Right. All of that brings unification. And
listen, that's the end goal. And if you need a simple way to unify yourself in transportation here in Albuquerque, you can go to Quality Mazda.
Here we go. Yeah.
We want to thank them because they are a sponsor.
Right.
And we love the fact that they are helping champion this teach-learn process. And so I'm more than happy to talk about the unifying process of getting all your friends in the car and sharing the experience of a road trip.
Yes.
And watching a New Mexican sunset through the windows of your brand new Mazda 6.
Yeah. And there's nothing better than that. And then also Tardo.co.
Yeah.
If you want to get paid for your data, or you own a company and you want to buy data directly from the source.
Or if you want to go beyond that, you want to be altruistic and you want to help share your data, and get paid at the same time because you want to move medical advances forward, you can do that.
Yes. And that's Tardo.co.
Tardo.co.
Takes what?
Less than 30 seconds.
Yeah, 30 seconds to sign up.
We're all good at typing in our email now.
The number one thing that somebody can do for the law of unity and the law of one is to share these podcasts with someone else.
Because,
truth has to be shared. And and we each have that responsibility to do that. And so for us, we don't need more followers. We don't need more subscriptions. We just want to get this information. This is why we do it freely. We want to get this information out to others. And each of our listeners can, by sending it to one person, and that one person,
your energy plant,
yes,
you're disseminating that network. You're sharing that power with others.
And that is the greatest power that you can have when you listen to this. And if you've listened all the way to the end, then I encourage you to be responsible and to share this with others.
And that responsibility is unifying.
And if it touched you and you resonated with this truth, take the truth and share it.
Thank you, Jason.
Yes.
Look within, and live your life on the edge of two worlds. A reality where you find true understanding of who you are. The learning is done. Become the teacher in embodying the oneness of all. Walk the cliff's edge between the seen and the unseen realities. Become a higher density being. Please go to www.higherdensityliving.com.